Storm warning. That's the message that flashed on my phone a couple of weeks ago, warning me of impending weather. Sure enough, another storm was headed our way, and despite the fact that it was spring, some 30+ centimeters of snow was expected. I had selected that feature on an app on my phone to alert me so I would not be caught off guard when storms of any kind headed our way. As I looked at that warning alert on my phone, I started to think about how many of us would have appreciated a storm warning a few months back, warning us of this storm we call COVID-19 that we now find ourselves in. This virus has turned our lives upside down. People can no longer work and are struggling to make ends meet. Schools have had to shut their doors, leaving families in many cases struggling to balance taking care of children and working from home. Many can no longer visit loved ones who are in long-term care or hospitals. The elderly and vulnerable have in many cases had to isolate themselves because their lives are on the line. And then there is the economic fallout that many feel and will feel for days and months to come. Storm warning. Wouldn't it have been great if we could have had a storm warning before the onslaught of COVID-19? I wonder if the disciples would have felt the same as they found themselves in the boat with the wind howling and the waves splashing over the bow. I love Mark's account of the story, found in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. It says this: "That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?' They were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him.'" It always amazes me that it was Jesus' idea to get in the boat. I think sometimes we miss that not so little detail. He knew exactly what he was doing and what was about to happen. The disciples, on the other hand, did not. They obediently get in the boat with Jesus, not knowing that their world was about to be turned upside down. Imagine their terror when the winds pick up and they, ankle deep in water, realize there is nothing they can do to change their situation. Remember, these men were fishermen. They had seen storms before. If these hardened, experienced fishermen were scared, there was likely something serious to be scared about. So they look around for Jesus. They know that if anyone can help, it's him. And they quickly find him, asleep on a cushion in the back of the boat. Terror grips their heart and they cry out in fear, "Don't you care if we drown?" What a familiar feeling when we find ourselves in the midst of the storms of life. I wonder how many of us have felt those same feelings in the midst of this worldwide COVID-19 storm that we find ourselves in. Where are you, Lord? What's going on? What's going to happen to me, to my loved ones? Why don't you do something? Don't you care if we drown? The feeling is real as we struggle to see the shore from the storm-rocked boat we find ourselves in. For many of us, we are not just afraid, we are downright terrified. Our hearts are gripped by a fear that makes it hard to breathe, that causes pain up our necks and into our heads, that keeps us awake at night. It's the kind of fear that can consume us. The disciples felt it too, and they, like us, were terrified of what was to come. They wake Jesus with their cry, and I picture him rising from his slumber and calmly yet firmly speaking these words, "Quiet, be still." I often wonder if those words were just spoken to the wind and the waves. Yes, it was the wind and the waves that died down and the lake that became completely calm. But didn't the disciples' terrified hearts also need to hear those words? The truth is, many times, those words need to be spoken more to our hearts than to our situations. You see, God doesn't always calm the angry waves around us. We know this. In fact, there are many warnings and examples in God's word telling us that we will have trouble in this life. In his wisdom and his wisdom alone, he sometimes allows us to experience the storms. But he never leaves us in the storm without the promise of his presence with us. I once read a quote that said, "When I can't get out of the storm must stay out of me." That's so important for us these days. This worldwide storm that we find ourselves in is totally out of our control. We can absolutely do our part, and we should. But in the end, we have no control over the storm we find ourselves facing right now. What we do have control over is the fear that grips our hearts. Jesus spoke the words, "Quiet, be still." And the wind and the angry waves crashing over the boat, it all stopped. It became completely calm. What was once a raging storm was silenced, and the fear in the hearts of those in the boat with him were also silenced as they realized who was in the boat with them. If the waves of this storm are threatening to swamp you, take a moment to realize just who is in the boat with you. Nothing is too big for him. Hear his words to your heart today. Quiet, be still. Quiet, be still. It's an invitation to hear him speak these words to you. Just as he was with the disciples, he is with you. Even in the midst of this storm that seems to have taken the world by force right now, he is not fazed. He is in the boat with you. Hear and take comfort in these words to your heart today. Quiet, be still. May God bless you.